I paid $350,000 for silence. Standing in the sun-drenched foyer of my weathered cottage on Driftwood Lane, listening to the Atlantic hum, I finally felt the iron band around my chest loosen. I thought I had purchased peace. Then my phone buzzed against the granite counter. It was my sister, Kendra, with a message that shattered the quiet. "We are 10 minutes away." My sanctuary lasted exactly 1 hour before the invasion began. The ink on the closing documents was barely dry when I pulled my Volvo into the crushed shell driveway of 24 Driftwood Lane. It was a gray, blustery Tuesday in October, the kind of day that kept the tourists away from Seabury Cove and left the town looking like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. To anyone else, the small shingled Cape Cod house might have looked a bit tired. The storm shutters were peeling, revealing a dusty blue under a layer of white, and the front porch sagged just enough to be noticeable. But to me, it looked like oxygen. I turned off the engine and just sat there. The silence in the car was heavy, but for the first time in 12 months. It was a good silence. It did not smell like the stale, recycled air of the Meridian Claims Group office. It did not sound like the ceaseless, high-pitched ping of urgent emails demanding justification for insurance adjustments. It sounded like the ocean, a low, rhythmic thrumming 3 blocks away. I was 33 years old. I had spent the last decade climbing a corporate ladder that turned out to lead directly into a wood chipper. The last year had been the worst, a blur of 60-hour weeks, a boss who viewed sleep as a character flaw, and the slow, grinding erosion of my ability to feel joy. I had saved every bonus, every overtime payout, and every unspent vacation dollar. I had not bought new clothes. I had not gone to Europe. I had bought this. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for the brass key in the cup holder. I had told no one. That was the golden rule of survival in the Nelson family. If you have something good, hide it, or they will carve it up until there is nothing left for you. My mother, Diane, viewed boundaries as personal insults. My older sister, Kendra, viewed my achievements as community property. If I bought a car, they needed rides. If I had a spare bedroom, they had a storage unit. If I had free time, they had a crisis. So, I had lied. I told them I was going on a camping trip to disconnect. The only person who knew the truth was Mara Whitcomb, my best friend since the 3rd grade, and she had sworn a blood oath to take the secret to her grave. I stepped out of the car, the salty wind whipping my hair across my face. I walked up the porch steps, the wood groaning softly under my boots. It was a welcoming sound, like an old dog shifting in its sleep. I slid the key into the lock, a heavy, satisfying tactile click, and pushed the door open. The air inside was cool and smelled of cedar and lemon oil. The previous owner, a widow named Mrs. Gable, had left the place immaculate. She had moved to Arizona to be with her grandchildren, but she had left behind the furniture, overstuffed armchairs and faded floral prints, a sturdy oak dining table, and a sense of calm that felt almost structural. I dropped my single duffel bag on the floor and exhaled, a long, shuddering breath that seemed to empty my lungs of a year's worth of stress. I am safe. I whispered to the empty room. It is mine. I spent the first hour just touching things. The smooth grain of the banister, the cool glass of the window looking out over the dune grass in the backyard, the rough brick of the fireplace. I was reclaiming my senses on the kitchen island. Sitting squarely in the center of the granite countertop was a thick 3-ring binder. It was navy blue with a label on the spine that read, "Welcome to Driftwood Lane," in neat, cursive handwriting. I pulled up a stool and opened it. Mrs. Gable had been thorough. There were tabs for everything: trash schedule, appliance manuals, local contractors, emergency numbers, but in the front pocket, there was a handwritten letter on thick, cream-colored stationery. Dear Leah, I hope this house holds you as gently as it held me. It is an old house, and like all old things, it has its quirks. The hot water takes a moment to arrive in the shower. The back door sticks when it rains, but the walls are thick, and the world is loud. My husband and I bought this place to escape the noise. We learned quickly that you have to protect your peace here, or the summer crowds will eat it alive. Be kind to the neighbors, but firm with your boundaries. The lock code is in the back of the book, but I suggest you change it. Peace is not given. Dear, it is made, warmly. Eleanor Gable. I read the line again. Peace is not given, it is made. I felt a sudden, sharp prick of tears in my eyes. It was ridiculous to cry over a note from a stranger, but I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. I ran my finger over the ink. I would change the locks. I would build a fortress of solitude here. I would read books. I would drink tea. I would stare at the wall and think about absolutely nothing. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The sound was so jarring in the quiet kitchen that I actually jumped. I pulled it out, my heart doing a traitorous little stutter step when I saw the name on the screen. Kendra. I stared at it. I could let it go to voicemail. I should let it go to voicemail. I was camping. After all, there was no cell service in the deep woods of my imaginary camping trip, but the conditioning ran deep. If I didn't answer, she would call Mom, then Mom would call, then they would text, then they would worry, then the worry would turn to anger. I slid my thumb across the screen. Hey, I said, keeping my voice low and groggy, playing the part of the weary camper. Leah! Kendra's voice blasted through the speaker, bright and loud, and completely devoid of the ability to listen. Oh my God, you answered! I was worried you were already out in the wilderness getting eaten by bears. I am fine, Kendra, I said, leaning against the counter. Just setting up the tent. What's up? Okay. So, don't kill me, she said, followed by a laugh that sounded like glass breaking. But I have the best news. My stomach tightened. That phrase never preceded good news. It usually preceded a request for money, a request for a favor, or a catastrophic life decision I was expected to fix. What did you do? I asked. I didn't do anything. I'm doing something for you. She paused for dramatic effect. I know you bought the beach house. The world stopped. The air left the room. I gripped the phone. How? Oh, don't be like that, Kendra said breezily. You know Aunt Linda's friend works at the bank, right? She saw the approval come through and mentioned it to Mom. And Mom told me. And we were all just so hurt you didn't tell us. But then I thought, you know what? Leah is just being Leah. She's burnt out. She needs a celebration. Kendra, I said, my voice shaking. This is a private purchase. I came here to be alone, and you will be. Sort of. Listen, since you've been working so hard, I decided to throw you a little housewarming reset. It's going to be so fun. I rounded up the girls, just a few of us, and we are going to pamper you. Facials, wine, the works. You won't have to lift a finger. I closed my eyes, pressing my forehead against the cool cabinet door. No, Kendra, no. I am not hosting. I have no furniture. I have no food. I am here to sleep. Don't worry about furniture. We're bringing air mattresses. And we did a Costco run. We have literally everything. It's just a girls' weekend. Who is we? I asked, dread coiling in my gut like a snake. Just me, the cousins, and my friend Tiffany and her crew. 12 of us, maybe 13, 12? I choked out the word. Kendra, absolutely not. This is a 1,200 square foot cottage. It has one bathroom. You cannot bring 12 people here. Leah, stop panic spiraling. We're family. We'll squeeze in. It'll be like a slumber party. Besides, I already told everyone to pack. We're in the car. Turn the car around, I said, shocking myself with the sharpness of my tone. There was a pause on the line. The bubbly facade slipped. Just for a second. Leah, we are already on the highway. We've been driving for an hour. You can't just kick us out. That is incredibly rude. I am not kicking you out because you are not here, I yelled, my voice echoing in the empty kitchen. I am telling you not to come. I need this weekend. I need rest. I cannot have a party. It's not a party. It's a reset, she insisted, the sweetness returning but with an edge of steel. Look, we'll barely be in the house. We're going to be on the beach all day. You won't even know we're there. You owe yourself some fun. Leah, stop being a martyr. I am not being a martyr. I am being the owner of this house. Great. Be the owner. Owners welcome guests. See you in an hour. Kendra. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my hands shaking uncontrollably now. The silence of the house, which had felt so protective moments ago, now felt fragile. It was about to be shattered. I looked at the welcome binder again. Protect your peace. I paced the kitchen. This was a test. This was exactly why I hadn't told them. They didn't see me as a person with needs. They saw me as a resource, a venue, a wallet. My phone buzzed again. A notification. You have been added to Seabury Weekend House. I stared at the screen. It was a group chat. There were 14 people in it. Numbers I didn't recognize. Host, Kendra. E.T. A 45 minutes. Leah is being a little stress ball, so let's bring the good vibes. Unknown number. OMG, cannot wait. Is there a blender? I'm bringing margarita stuff. Unknown number. I claimed the loft. Does anyone know if the lighting in the living room is good for content? I need to shoot some stuff for my brand. Unknown number. Is there parking for 4 cars, or should we park on the grass? I felt like I was going to throw up. Strangers. She was bringing strangers to sleep on my floor and park on my grass. They were discussing my home like it was an Airbnb they had rented for the weekend. I dialed Mara. She answered on the first ring. Hello? They know. I said, my voice tight. What? How? Aunt Linda's friend at the bank? Kendra is on her way? With 12 people? Strangers? Mara? People I don't know. They are asking about the lighting for their brand? Oh, hell no, Mara said, her voice dropping into her professional lawyer register. Leah, listen to me. You have to lock the door. You have to tell them to turn around. I tried. She hung up on me. She said they're already driving. That is a tactic. Leah, it is the beg forgiveness rather than ask permission strategy. If you let them in tonight, you are setting a precedent for the next 30 years. If they get a key this weekend, they will never give it back. I know, I whispered, but she's my sister. If I lock her out, Mom will never forgive me. It'll be World War III. It's already war. Leah, they just launched the first missile. You are just standing there letting it hit you. I looked around the kitchen. The sunlight was fading, casting long shadows across the floor. I felt small. I felt like the little sister who was always told she was too sensitive, too serious, too selfish. Text her. Mara said, do not call. You need a paper trail. Send one message. Be firm. Be clear. Then turn off your phone. I can't turn off my phone. Yes, you can. You are the owner. Say it. I am the owner, I repeated, though it felt like a lie. Write this down, Mara commanded. I opened the text thread with Kendra, ignoring the group chat that was currently debating the merits of tequila versus vodka. Kendra, I am not joking. You cannot come here. I am not hosting guests. I am recovering from a serious burnout, and I need to be alone. If you show up, I will not let you in. Turn around. This is not up for discussion. I read it to Mara. Good, she said. Send it. I pressed send. My thumb felt heavy. I waited. The 3 little dots appeared immediately. Then they vanished. Then a thumbs up emoji appeared. Just a thumbs up. Then, a voice note. I played it. Kendra's voice was laughing, loud and tinny against the background noise of a highway. Oh my God. Leah, you are so dramatic. Serious burnout. Okay, corporate queen. We're bringing wine. You'll be fine. Stop being such a buzzkill. See you soon. The message ended. She didn't believe me. She didn't believe I was capable of saying no. And why would she? I never had before. Lock the door, Mara said softly. I mean it. Put the deadbolt on. I hung up. I walked to the front door. I turned the heavy brass deadbolt. I checked the back door. Locked. I checked the windows. Locked. I went into the living room and sat in one of Mrs. Gable's floral armchairs as the sun went down. The house grew dark. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't want to look like I was home. I wanted to disappear. I must have dozed off. The emotional exhaustion of the day, combined with the adrenaline crash, pulled me under. I woke to the sound of crunching gravel. I sat up, my heart hammering against my ribs. The room was pitch black. I looked at my phone. It was 2 a.m. Headlights swept across the front window, illuminating the dust motes in the air. Then another set of headlights. Then a third. Car doors slammed. Voices, loud, laughing voices. I'm telling you, it's this one. That was Kendra. It looks dark. Dude, are you sure she's up? A male voice. Deep, unfamiliar. She's probably asleep. She's essentially a grandmother in a 30-year-old's body. Just grab the coolers. I stood up, my legs feeling like lead. I crept toward the hallway, staying out of the line of sight of the windows. Heavy footsteps thumped onto the porch. Then, the sound of the digital smart lock pad waking up. Beep, 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 beep. My breath caught in my throat. The code. Mrs. Gable had said the code was in the binder. I hadn't changed it yet. I had been too busy panicking. But Kendra didn't know the code. I hadn't given it to her. Beep, 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 beep. A pause. Then the mechanical whir of the lock disengaging. The little light on the interior side of the lock flashed green. My blood ran cold. How? How did she have the code? I had only just bought the house. The only people who had the code were the realtor, the previous owner, and the door handle turned. I couldn't let them walk in on me hiding in the dark like a burglar in my own home. I flipped the hallway light switch. The sudden light flooded the entryway just as the door swung open. Kendra stood there. She was wearing a neon pink tracksuit and holding a bottle of champagne by the neck. Behind her, 2 men I had never seen in my life were hoisting a massive blue cooler up the steps. One of them was shirtless despite the October chill. "Leah!" Kendra shrieked, her face lighting up with a performance of delight that made my teeth ache. "You're up!" She stepped over the threshold. She didn't ask. She didn't hesitate. She just stepped in, claiming the space. "Kendra," I said, my voice sounding thin and reedy. "Oh, stop," she said, rushing forward to hug me. I stiffened, my arms staying at my sides. She smelled of expensive perfume and fast food. "You look terrible." "See? I told you needed a reset." She pulled back and waved a hand at the shirtless man. "This is Tyler, and that's Mitch. They're helping with the heavy stuff." "Hey," Mitch grunted, wrestling the cooler through the doorway. He scraped the plastic against the fresh white trim. I flinched. "Kendra," I said, trying to find the authority I had felt when I spoke to Mara. "I told you not to come." I know, she said, waving her hand dismissively as if swatting away a fly. "But I knew you didn't mean it. You were just stressed. And look, we're here. And we brought tacos." She turned back to the driveway where more car doors were slamming. More people were coming up the walk. A girl with blonde extensions was dragging a rolling suitcase that looked big enough to hold a body. "Who are these people?" I asked, watching my sanctuary fill with noise. "Just friends," Kendra said. "Don't worry about it. Where do you want the cooler?" "Kitchen?" She started walking toward the kitchen. "My kitchen." I stood frozen in the hallway. I looked at the open door. I looked at the neighbor's house across the street. Dark, quiet, peaceful. If I screamed now, if I demanded they leave, it would be a scene. The police would come. The neighbors would wake up. My mother would be called. I would be the hysterical sister who ruined the weekend. I would be the villain. Kendra knew that. She banked on it. She knew I would choose dignity over defense. She knew I would swallow the poison to save the peace. I watched Mitch drop the cooler onto the hardwood floor with a heavy thud. "Careful," I snapped. "Relax." "Leah," Kendra called from the kitchen. "Already opening cupboards. Do you have wine glasses? Or are we drinking out of mugs?" I closed my eyes. I took a breath. I walked to the front door. The blonde girl with the suitcase was halfway up the stairs. "Hi," she chirped. "I'm Tiffany. Is there Wi-Fi?" I looked at her. I looked past her to the driveway, where 3 cars were parked on the grass I had admired just hours ago. "Come in," I said softly. I stepped back and let them pass. But as I closed the door behind the last stranger, A guy carrying a guitar case who didn't even make eye contact. I felt something inside me snap. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet, clean sound of a bridge collapsing. I locked the deadbolt. I turned to face the chaos in my living room. Kendra was already syncing her phone to a Bluetooth speaker she had brought. Bass began to thump against the walls. I would let them stay. I would not make a scene. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me cry. But this was it. I looked at Kendra, who was laughing at something the shirtless guy said. Completely at ease, completely in control, completely unaware that she had just made a fatal error. She thought she had won. She thought this was just another weekend where she steamrolled Leah and got what she wanted. She was wrong. This wasn't a party. It was evidence, and I was going to collect every single piece of it. I forced a smile onto my face, a mask of compliance that felt tight and cold. The glasses are in the top left cabinet, I said. Kendra beamed. See? I knew you'd come around. I didn't say anything. I just watched her. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel helpless. I felt patient. By noon on Saturday, my sanctuary had been colonized. The invasion happened in stages, like a rising tide that you do not notice until your feet are wet and the sand is eroding beneath you. First, it was the 12 people Kendra had promised. Then, around 1 in the afternoon, a black Jeep pulled onto the lawn, not the driveway, the actual dormant Bermuda grass, and 2 more people spilled out. They were carrying folding beach chairs and a massive portable speaker that looked like a piece of military artillery. I stood by the kitchen window, watching them. Who are they? I asked Kendra. She was slicing limes on my grandmother's cutting board, which I had brought from my apartment specifically to keep it safe. She was hacking at the fruit with a dull steak knife, leaving jagged rinds everywhere. Oh, that is just Mike and Sarah, she said, not looking up. They were in the area. It seemed mean not to include them. You said 12 people. I said. My voice was flat. I was counting heads through the glass. One guy was already shirtless, setting up a cornhole game in the front yard. Another girl was taking selfies against the shingled siding. Leah, stop counting. Kendra laughed, wiping sticky juice onto a paper towel. It is 15 people. Big deal. The house handles it fine. Look at this open concept. It breathes. It did not breathe. The house was choking. The living room, which Mrs. Gable had left so sparse and elegant, was now a labyrinth of duffel bags, coolers, and inflatable mattresses. The air smelled of tequila, sunscreen, and that specific, cloying scent of body spray that seems to linger in rooms long after the person has left. I watched Kendra move through the space. That was the thing that unsettled me more than the noise. It was her confidence. She walked into the hallway and started pointing at doors like a traffic controller. Okay, listen up, she shouted over the thrum of the bass. Tiffany and Jessica, you guys take the loft. Mike, you and Sarah can have the pull-out couch in the den. The guys are on the air mattresses in the living room. She turned to me. She was smiling, but her eyes were assessing me, calculating the path of least resistance. And Leah, since you are solo, I put your stuff in the bunk room. It is super cozy. I figured me and the other girls would take the master since there are 4 of us. We need the bathroom space. I stared at her. You put me in the bunk room, I repeated. The room intended for children. The room that was 8 feet by 8 feet. Well, yeah, she said, acting perplexed by my tone. You are one person. Why would you need the master? It is just logic. Leah, treat the place like your own. But be practical. Treat it like my own. The phrase rattled inside my skull. I had signed the mortgage deed 48 hours ago. I had drained my savings account to the scraping point. And now I was being assigned a bunk bed in my own home by a woman who had never paid a property tax bill in her life. I am not staying in the bunk room, I said. Kendra sighed, a long, exaggerated exhalation that drew the attention of the 3 people closest to us. Okay, fine, she said, dropping her voice to a stage whisper. Do not make it weird. I just thought you wanted to be a good host. But if you need the big room to feel important, take it. I will sleep on the floor. She waited. She knew the script. She knew that Leah, the peacekeeper, the one who absorbed the family tension so it would not spill onto the carpet, would never let her sister sleep on the floor. "Keep the master," I said quietly. I turned and walked into the small back bedroom, closing the door. I sat on the narrow mattress. The sheets were unfamiliar. Polyester. Scratchy. They were not mine. I had not bought them. I looked around the room. There was a stack of towels on the dresser that I had not washed. There were travel-sized soaps on the nightstand that I had not purchased. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. They had not just crashed my weekend. They had set up camp. They had prepared. I stood up and went back out. I needed to stop this before it calcified into reality. I found Kendra on the back deck, holding a glass of rosé and looking out at the dunes. She looked regal. She looked like the owner. "Kendra," I said. She turned, smiling. "Look at this view. Leah, you really scored. We need to talk, now." I stepped down onto the sandy grass, forcing her to follow me away from the house, away from her audience. We walked toward the property line, where the sea oats grew tall and wild. "This is not a rental," I said, keeping my voice low but hard. "This is my home. I did not agree to this. I did not agree to 15 people. I did not agree to you assigning rooms." Kendra took a sip of her wine, her eyes scanning the horizon. "You are acting like a brat," she said casually. "Excuse me?" "A brat," she repeated, looking at me now. "You buy this place. You hide it from us. And then when we try to celebrate you, you act like we are criminals. Do you know how much I did for you growing up?" I blinked, taken aback by the pivot. "What?" "When Mom was working double shifts." "Who made you dinner?" Kendra asked. Her voice was getting louder, sharper. "Who picked you up from school? Who lied to Dad when you dented the car?" "That was 20 years ago." I said, "It matters," she snapped. "Families help each other. I carried you for years. Leah, I sacrificed my social life to make sure you were okay. And now you have this big corporate job and this beach house. And you cannot even let your sister enjoy it for one weekend? You are so selfish. It is actually heartbreaking." I felt the familiar heavy cloak of guilt descending. It was a well-worn garment, stitched together by years of manipulation. She was right. Technically, she had helped raise me, but the logic was twisted. Gratitude was not a debt that required me to hand over the keys to my life. "I am not being selfish," I said, though my voice wavered. "I am asking for boundaries." "Boundaries are for strangers," she said, dismissing me with a wave of her wineglass. "We are blood, now. Come have a drink and stop ruining the vibe. Everyone can feel your tension. It is suffocating." She walked back toward the house, her hips swinging, leaving me standing in the dune grass, feeling small and petty and completely outmaneuvered. I stayed outside for a long time. I walked the perimeter of the yard, checking the foundation, checking the windows. I was near the front driveway, staring at the line of cars parked haphazardly on the grass, when a man walked up the road. He was older, perhaps 60, wearing a faded navy windbreaker and walking a golden retriever that looked as tired as he did. He stopped at the edge of my driveway and looked at the cars, then at me. "Afternoon," he said. "Hi," I said, crossing my arms. "You the new owner?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I am Leah Nelson." He nodded slowly. "Owen Dillard. I am 2 doors down. The blue siding. Nice to meet you. Mr. Dillard?" He gestured vaguely at the house. "Just a heads up. The noise ordinance kicks in at 10. The last folks were pretty good about it, but the summer crowds can get rowdy. We appreciate it if the renters keep the bass down." I froze. "Renters?" I said. He looked at me, confused. "Yeah, the short-term folks. I am not renting it." I said, "I live here. Well, I am going to be using it. These are just family." Owen looked at the cars again. There were 6 of them now. He looked at the cooler on the porch. He looked at the girl taking selfies in the window. He gave me a look that was not unkind, but it was filled with a weary sort of knowledge. "If you say so," he said. "Just looked like a turnover day. People coming and going with luggage. Cleaning crew was here yesterday morning." My heart stopped. Cleaning crew? I asked. Yeah, the little van with the green logo. They were here for a few hours, getting it ready, I assumed. He tugged on the dog's leash. Anyway, welcome to the neighborhood. Ms. Nelson, just keep it down after 10. Sound carries over the water. He walked away. I stood there, the blood rushing in my ears. The cleaning crew. I had not hired a cleaning crew. Mrs. Gable had left the house clean. I turned and walked back into the house. I ignored the music. I ignored Tiffany, who asked me if I knew where the extra toilet paper was. I walked straight to the bathroom, the only room with a lock, and slid the bolt home. I sat on the edge of the tub and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking. I typed my address into the search bar. 24 Driftwood Lane, Seabury Cove. The first result was the Zillow listing, marked Sold. I scrolled down. The second result was a link to a site called Cove Nest Stays. The headline read, The Driftwood Retreat, Luxury Coastal Escape, freshly updated. I clicked it. The page loaded, and I felt the floor drop out from under me. There was my house, but the photos were not the ones from the real estate listing. These were new, high-definition, wide-angle shots. There was a photo of the living room with a throw blanket artfully draped over the arm of the chair, a blanket I did not own. There was a photo of the kitchen with a bowl of lemons on the counter, lemons that were not there when I arrived. I scrolled through the gallery. There was a photo of the bunk room, cozy sleeping for the little ones. The caption read, I looked at the date on the availability calendar. The house was booked for this weekend. It was marked owner block. But the following weekend was booked, and the one after that, the rate was $400 a night. I felt bile rise in my throat. I looked for the contact information. Managed by Cove Nest Stays, local experts. There was a phone number. I pressed the button. It rang twice. Thank you for calling Cove Nest Stays. This is Brenda speaking. How can I help you book your perfect getaway? The voice was bright, professional, and terrifyingly cheerful. Hi, I said. I am calling about a property. The Driftwood Retreat. Oh, wonderful choice. That is one of our newest listings. It is absolutely charming. Are you looking to book? No, I said. I am the owner. There was a pause, a brief, confused silence. Oh, Ms. Nelson? Yes. Hi. We were not expecting to hear from you. Did you have trouble with the access code? I know the tech set it up on Thursday. My hand gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. What tech? I asked. What are you talking about? I never listed this house with you. Brenda laughed. A nervous, confused little sound. I am sorry. I have your file right here on my screen. Leah Nelson. We received your signed onboarding packet last week. The property manager submitted everything. What property manager? One moment. Let me check the notes. I heard typing. Okay, here it is. The primary contact is listed as, well, it is under your name, but the submission came through the portal. We have the signed exclusivity agreement, the direct deposit form, everything. Direct deposit? I whispered. Yes, ma'am. To the account ending in 4490. That is not my account. I said, Ms. Nelson, I am a little confused. Is there a problem? We sent the welcome email to you on Monday. You confirmed the listing proof on Tuesday. Read me the email address. I said, I am sorry? Read me the email address you have on file. Okay, it is leah.nelson@gmail.com. My email was leah_Nelson. Underscore, not dot. It was one character different, a ghost account. I did not sign anything. I said, my voice trembling, I did not hire you. This is a mistake, Ms. Nelson. We have a notarized digital signature. If you want to cancel, there is a termination fee. But we usually require 30 days' notice. You have guests checking in next Friday. I hung up. I stared at the phone. I felt dizzy. It wasn't just a party. It wasn't just Kendra being pushy. My house was a product. It had been packaged, marketed, and sold before I even touched the keys. I stood up and unlocked the bathroom door. I needed to see her. I needed to look at my sister and see if she knew. I walked out into the living room. Kendra was by the fridge, holding a bottle of vodka. She was laughing at something the shirtless guy, Mike, was saying. "Kendra," I said. She turned. Her face was flushed. She looked happy. "What?" she asked. I held up my phone. "I just found my house online," I said, "on a rental site." The room did not go silent. The music was still thumping, but the space between us seemed to freeze. Kendra didn't gasp. She didn't look shocked. She looked annoyed. Her eyes narrowed. Just a fraction. It was a flicker of irritation, like I had pointed out a stain on her shirt. "Oh my God. Leah," she groaned, "why are you always digging for things to be upset about? Someone listed my house. Kendra, someone signed a contract in my name. So? Maybe the old owner forgot to take it down." "They used my name," I said. "They used a fake email that looks like mine. They have a bank account attached to it." Kendra rolled her eyes. She turned back to the counter and poured vodka into a plastic cup. "You are being paranoid. It is probably just a glitch. You know how the internet is. Data gets mixed up. A glitch does not sign a contract." "Kendra," she spun around, and for a second, the mask slipped. Her face was hard. "Why do you have to make everything so dramatic?" she snapped. "Can you not just enjoy the weekend? We are here having a good time, and you are playing detective. It is exhausting." Leah, she wasn't surprised. She was managing me. She was trying to gaslight me into silence because the truth was inconvenient. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I realized I didn't know this person. I knew the sister who braided my hair. I knew the sister who borrowed my clothes. But I did not know this woman who could look me in the eye and lie about the theft of my own home. "We will talk about this later," I said coldly. "Whatever," she said, turning her back to me. "Do you want a shot?" "No." I walked away. I went to the front door. I needed to check the lock. I opened the app on my phone, the smart lock app that I had downloaded just that morning. I went to the settings, users. There was my account. Leah, owner. But above it, there was another account, property access. It was listed as administrator. I tapped on it. Delete user. A pop-up appeared on the screen. Action denied. Only the primary account holder can remove administrators. I stared at the screen. I was not the primary account holder. Someone else had registered the serial number of the lock before I did. I was a guest in my own system. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to lean against the wall. They had digital keys. They had physical access. They had the ability to lock me out. I walked out onto the porch. The air was cold, but I was sweating. I texted Mara. "Call me." "Emergency." She called 10 seconds later. "Are you okay?" she asked immediately. "No," I said. I told her everything. The listing, the fake email, the bank account, the lock. There was a long silence on the other end. "Leah," Mara said, her voice dropping into a tone I had never heard her use. It was the voice of a prosecutor. "This is not a family dispute. This is fraud. This is identity theft." "I know," I whispered. "Kendra knows." I saw it on her face. "Okay, listen to me," Mara said. "Do not confront her again. Not yet. If you confront her without proof, she will spin it. She will make you look crazy. She will tell your mother you are having a breakdown. She already is." I said, "You need evidence." "Leah, hard evidence. Screenshots of the listing, the URL, the phone number you called. Take photos of the lock serial number. Write down the license plates of everyone in the driveway. Get the names of the guests. I can't just interrogate people. You don't have to interrogate them. Just listen. Take pictures of the room. If there are documents, find them." I felt a shift inside me. It was a cold, hard clicking sensation, like a tumbler falling into place. I had spent my whole life trying to keep the peace. I had let them walk over me because I thought that was the price of love. But this wasn't love. This was extraction. "Okay," I said. "I will get it all. Be careful. Leah, if they have a bank account set up, there is money involved. People get dangerous when you mess with their money." I hung up. I put my phone in my pocket. I wiped the sweat from my upper lip. I turned around and walked back into the house. I walked into the living room. Kendra was dancing. She saw me and waved. "Finally," she yelled. "Put a smile on." I forced the muscles of my face to contract. I pulled my lips back into a smile. It felt like stretching rubber. "I am grabbing a water," I said. I walked into the kitchen. I didn't grab a water. I grabbed my phone and started taking pictures. I took a picture of the welcome binder. I flipped through it. The page with the Wi-Fi password had been replaced. The new page had the Cove Nest Stays logo in the corner. I took a picture. I walked past the dining table where a pile of keys lay. I took a picture of the keys. One of them had a green plastic tag that said, "Guest copy." I walked outside, pretending to check the sunset. I walked down the line of cars. Click, license plate, click, license plate. I went back inside. I sat in the corner of the living room, watching them. I was invisible to them. I was just Leah, boring, reliable. Pushover, Leah. I listened. I heard Mike talking to the guy with the guitar. "Yeah." Wyatt set it up. Mike said, "He said the cash flow is going to be insane in the summer." Wyatt, Kendra's boyfriend, the one who was always pitching investment opportunities that never materialized. I wrote the name down in my notes app. Wyatt. The night wore on. The music got louder. The laughter got sloppier. I retreated to the bunk room around midnight. I locked the door. I put a chair under the handle. I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark, listening to the thumping bass, my phone clutched in my hand like a weapon. Around 2 a.m, the music finally died down. The house settled into the heavy, murmuring quiet of intoxicated sleep. I needed water. My throat was parched. I moved the chair. I opened the door silently. The hallway was dark. I stepped carefully. Avoiding the creaky board near the bathroom, I heard a voice. It was coming from the back porch. The sliding glass door was cracked open just an inch. It was a whisper, urgent, hushed. I crept closer. I pressed my back against the wall next to the door. I looked through the gap in the curtains. It was Kendra. She was wrapped in a blanket, smoking a cigarette, something she swore she had quit 5 years ago. She was holding her phone to her ear. "I know," she hissed. "I know she found the listing." She called the number. Pause. She listened to the person on the other end. "No. She doesn't know about the account. She just thinks it's a mistake. She's dumb." "Wyatt? She's trusting." "Wyatt?" I held my breath. My heart was hammering so hard I thought she would hear it through the glass. "Yeah. Well, we have to fix it," Kendra said. The plan was to get her used to the idea first. If she freaks out and changes the locks, we are screwed. Pause. "Don't worry. I am handling her. I told Mom she is acting unstable. If we play this right, we can convince her she can't manage the place alone." She took a drag of the cigarette, the embers glowing bright orange in the dark. "Just keep the bookings open," she whispered. "We need the cash. Just keep her busy. If she calms down, she'll sign. She'll sign." I stepped back. I moved silently, backward down the hall, my socks sliding on the wood. I went back into the bunk room. I closed the door. I didn't put the chair back. I didn't need to. I sat on the floor, in the dark. They weren't just using the house. They were planning to take it. They were planning to gaslight me, declare me incompetent, and force me to sign it over to their management. They were going to steal my peace, my money, and my sanity. I looked at the phone in my hand. If she calms down, she'll sign. I wasn't going to calm down. I was going to burn them to the ground. But first, I would let them think they had won. I lay down on the narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. I waited for the sun to rise. I had a lot of work to do. The sun rose over Seabury Cove like a pale, watery eye, watching the wreckage of my morning. I had not slept. My body felt brittle, like dried driftwood, but my mind was operating with a cold, terrifying clarity. I walked into the kitchen at 7 o'clock. The house was silent, save for the rhythmic snoring emanating from the living room floor where Mike and the other guys were sprawled on deflating air mattresses. The air smelled stale, a mixture of spilled beer and sleep. I started a pot of coffee. The routine felt grotesque in its normalcy. I was making coffee for invaders. I was performing domesticity in a war zone. while the water gurgled. I pulled my laptop from my bag. I sat at the kitchen island, facing the room so no one could see my screen. I opened the digital folder labeled House Closing, Final. I had skimmed these documents. I had been so exhausted, so desperate to just have the house, that I had trusted the process. I had trusted the people around me. I scrolled past the deed, past the mortgage note. I stopped at a document I barely remembered seeing. Technology and Utility Setup Addendum. It was a standard form, authorizing the title company to transfer utility accounts and set up smart home features. I zoomed in on the contact section. Primary contact email, leah@nelsongmail.com. There it was, the dot, the imposter. I looked at the signature at the bottom. It was my signature, or at least, it looked like it, but the date next to it was Tuesday at 9 in the morning. I had been in a mandatory compliance training meeting on Tuesday at 9 in the morning. I had not signed anything then. My hands were shaking, but I forced them to be still. I closed the laptop as I heard footsteps. It was Sarah, the girl who had arrived in the Jeep. She was wearing an oversized t-shirt and rubbing her eyes. "Is that coffee?" she groaned. "Yes," I said, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack my face. "Cups are in the cabinet. You are a lifesaver," she mumbled, shuffling past me. I watched her pour a mug. She seemed nice enough. She had no idea she was part of a crime scene. "I am going to run an errand," I said. Standing up, "I need to pick up filters." Sarah nodded vaguely into her steam. "Cool. We will probably just chill here until everyone wakes up." I grabbed my keys and walked out. I didn't look at the cars on the grass. I didn't look at the beer cans on the porch. I just got in my Volvo and drove. I drove straight to the fictional Harborline Title and Settlement office on Main Street. It was Sunday, but their website said they had limited hours for document pickups. I prayed someone was there. The office was quiet. A young woman with glasses was sitting at the front desk, sorting mail. "Can I help you?" she asked, looking up. "I need to speak to someone about a closing file." I said, "My name is Leah Nelson. We closed on Friday." She frowned. "Usually, we don't do file reviews on weekends. Can it wait until Monday?" "No." I said. My voice was steady, but there was an edge to it that made her sit up straighter. "It is an emergency regarding unauthorized access to my property." She blinked. "Okay, let me get the office manager." 5 minutes later, I was sitting in a conference room with a woman named Mrs. Higgins. She looked tired, but professional. "Ms. Nelson, what seems to be the problem?" I opened my laptop and showed her the addendum. "This email address is incorrect." I said, "It is not mine, and I did not sign this document on Tuesday morning. I was at work." Mrs. Higgins pulled up the file on her computer. She clicked through a few screens, her brow furrowing. "Well, according to our logs, this addendum was submitted electronically via the portal. The user logged in, verified their identity with a two-factor authentication code sent to the phone on file, and signed." "What phone number?" I asked. She read it out. 555-0199. I wrote it down. It wasn't my number. It wasn't Kendra's number. "That is not my number." I said. Mrs. Higgins looked at me, then back at the screen. "Ms. Nelson. The phone number was updated in the system 2 weeks ago. The request came from, let me see, the email address on file, the fake email. It was a loop. The fake email changed the phone number, and the phone number verified the fake email." "Who requested the change?" I asked. She hesitated. "We have a note here. Client requested update via Property Manager Assistant for closing coordination." Property Manager Assistant. I felt cold. I did not hire a property manager. I said, "I do not have an assistant." Mrs. Higgins took off her glasses. "Miss Nelson, I want to help you, but we verify everything through the contact info provided. If someone else has access to your credentials or—" "They don't have my credentials." I interrupted. "They created new ones. Who had access to the file before closing?" "Who was the vendor mentioned?" She typed for a moment. "We had a pest inspection, a structural engineer, and a general contractor for an estimate on the deck. I didn't request a contractor." I said, "The note says Buyer's sister met the contractor on site for estimate. I closed my eyes. The memory washed over me. 2 weeks ago. I was drowning in work. Kendra had called. Leah, I am going to be near Seabury anyway. Do you want me to swing by the house and let the inspectors in? You are so busy. Let me help. I had said yes. I had thanked her. I had thought she was being kind. She had used that time to bring in a contractor, probably Wyatt, to get the layout for the listing photos. She had used that time to get the lock serial number. She had used that time to set the trap. I looked at Mrs. Higgins. I need to file an affidavit. I said, I need to correct the contact info immediately, and I need a full log of every login, every change, every document access. Mrs. Higgins nodded slowly. We can do that. But Ms. Nelson, if this was done by a family member, we are required to report suspected fraud to the underwriters. It could trigger an investigation. Do it, I said. I signed the papers with a pen that felt like a chisel. I was carving my name back into my own life. I walked out of the office with a stack of printed logs and a corrected file. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, just breathing. I checked the number Mrs. Higgins had given me, 555-0199. I put it into a reverse lookup app on my phone. Prepaid burner, no registered owner. Of course, Wyatt wasn't stupid. He was slippery. I drove back to the house. The sun was fully up now. The sky was a brilliant, mocking blue. When I pulled into the driveway, the scene had shifted from hungover quiet to active chaos. The music was back on, some upbeat pop song about summer love. People were moving around the yard. There was a guy with a massive camera, a professional DSLR with a long lens, directing a group of girls on the porch. Okay, now laugh like you just heard the funniest joke. Throw your heads back. Great, now, hold the mimosas up. Cheers to the beach life. I got out of the car. I slammed the door. Kendra was standing near the photographer, holding a reflector to bounce light onto the girls' faces. She looked like a director on a movie set. What is this? I asked, walking up to her. Leah, you're back. Kendra beamed. This is Jason. He is a local photographer, I thought. Since we have everyone here, we should get some group shots. You know, for memories. She leaned in closer, dropping her voice. And honestly, Leah, these photos are going to be gold for the listing. Professional shots increase bookings by like 40%. I am doing this for you. It is free marketing. For the listing. She wasn't even hiding it anymore. She was so confident in her control over me that she was explaining her business strategy to my face. I looked at Jason. He was snapping away. Stop, I said. Jason lowered the camera. Sorry? Stop taking pictures. I said, get off my porch. Leah, Kendra hissed, grabbing my arm. Don't be rude. He is doing us a favor. He is not doing me a favor. I said, pulling my arm away. I did not hire him. I do not want photos of my house on the internet. I turned to Kendra. The time for pretending was over. Did you list my house? I asked. My voice was loud enough to cut through the music. The girls on the porch stopped posing. Sarah looked over from the cornhole game. Kendra's face went tight. We talked about this. Leah, you are being paranoid. Did you set up the lock? I asked, stepping closer. Did you create the email account with the dot? Did you sign the addendum on Tuesday morning while I was at work? Kendra laughed. But it was a brittle, nervous sound. Wow, she said, looking around at her audience. You are really spiraling. Is this the burnout talking? Because you sound crazy. I am not crazy. I said, I went to the title company. I saw the logs. I saw the phone number. Who is the property manager? Kendra? Is it Wyatt? Kendra flinched. Just a tiny twitch of her eye. Wyatt is just trying to help you, she shouted suddenly. Abandoning the calm act, you have no idea what you are doing. You buy this house, but you don't know how to leverage it. We are trying to set you up so you can actually afford it. I can afford it, I yelled back. I have a job. I don't need to turn my home into a hotel for your boyfriend's gambling debts. The yard went silent. The music seemed to stop, though I knew it was still playing. Kendra's face turned red. She stepped into my personal space. "You are such a bitch," she spat. "After everything I did, you are going to humiliate me in front of my friends?" "Your friends?" I said, looking around. "Or your customers?" Kendra froze. I looked at the girl closest to me. It was Tiffany. She was holding a mimosa, looking wide-eyed. "Did you pay to be here?" I asked her. Tiffany looked at Kendra, then at me. Did you pay?" I repeated. "Well, yeah," she said, her voice small. "We Venmo'd Kendra for the package. $300 for the weekend, food and lodging." I looked at the guy with the guitar. "You?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, shrugging. "Same. I did the math. 15 people, $300 each, $4,500. Kendra had pocketed nearly $5,000 to sell my house to strangers. I turned back to Kendra. "You sold tickets to my house," I said. "You are running an illegal hotel in my living room." Kendra crossed her arms. "It was for groceries," she yelled, "and booze. Do you have any idea how much this stuff costs? I am not making a profit. I am covering costs. You are lying," I said quietly. I walked past her. I walked up the porch steps. I felt the eyes of 15 people on my back. Some looked embarrassed. Some looked angry. Some looked like they were watching a reality show and waiting for the next commercial break. I saw 2 girls sitting on the swing in the corner of the porch. They had been quiet all weekend. Tessa and Ivy. I stopped in front of them. "Did she tell you this was a rental?" I asked. Tessa looked down at her lap. "She said it was a shared family property," she said. "She said you guys co-owned it, and you were cool with us coming. She said the money was for the family fund." The family fund, a lie wrapped in a truth wrapped in a scam. I nodded. "Thank you." I walked into the house. I went to the kitchen island. I picked up my phone. I opened the group chat. Seabury Weekend House. My fingers flew across the screen. I didn't care about grammar. I cared about clarity. "This is Leah. I am the sole owner of this property. This house is not a rental. It is not a shared family property. I did not authorize this trip. I did not receive any money from any of you. Kendra has collected your money without my permission. You are currently trespassing. I am asking you to vacate the property by 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. If you have issues with refunds, speak to Kendra. Do not contact me." I hit send. Then I did something I had never done before. I left the chat. I put the phone down. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. Kendra burst through the front door. "You deleted the chat," she screamed. "You can't do that." "I didn't delete it," I said calmly. "I just left." "You are ruining everything," she shrieked. "Do you know how embarrassing this is? You are making me look like a thief." "You are a thief," I said. She stared at me. Her mouth opened and closed. "I hate you," she whispered. "I know," I said. I walked past her. I grabbed a jacket. "I am going for a walk," I said. "When I get back, I want the music off." I walked out the back door, down the sandy path, and onto the beach. The wind was whipping off the water, cold and biting. I walked until my legs burned. I walked until the house was just a speck in the distance. I sat down on a piece of driftwood and stared at the ocean. I felt hollowed out. The sister I thought I had, the annoying, pushy, but ultimately loving sister, didn't exist. She was a fiction I had maintained to keep myself warm. The real Kendra was a predator, and she had brought her pack to my door. But as I sat there, watching the waves crash against the shore, I realized something else. I wasn't afraid anymore. The fear of conflict, the fear of losing her approval, the fear of rocking the boat, it was gone. It had been washed away by the sheer, undeniable reality of her betrayal. She had tried to take my house. She had tried to take my name. She had made a mistake. She thought she was fighting the old Leah, the Leah who apologized for taking up space, the Leah who kept the peace at her own expense. She didn't know the new Leah, the Leah who owned a house, the Leah who had a title lawyer, the Leah who had evidence. I pulled my phone out. I turned it off. I sat in the silence for a long time. It wasn't the peaceful silence I had bought the house for. It was the silence before a storm, and I was ready to be the lightning. The morning broke with the acoustic violence of zippers and slamming doors. I sat in the kitchen, nursing a mug of black coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago, watching the exodus. It was 10 o'clock. The deadline I had set in the group chat was hanging in the air like smoke. The departure was divided into two distinct camps. First, there were the embarrassed ones, Tessa and Ivy, the two girls on the swing, walked past the kitchen island with their heads down. "Thank you for letting us stay," Tessa whispered. Not meeting my eyes. "We really did not know. We thought, well, we are sorry." I nodded at them. "I appreciate that. Drive safe." They practically ran to their car, desperate to escape the blast radius of the family implosion. Then there was the second camp, the outraged. Mike, the shirtless cornhole player, hauled his cooler out the front door, letting the screen slam shut with a force that rattled the window panes. Unbelievable. He muttered loud enough for me to hear. Talk about a buzzkill. Tiffany followed him, dragging her suitcase across the hardwood floor, the floor I had just paid to have refinished, creating a long, audible scuff. She stopped at the door and looked back at me. Her expression was not apologetic. It was disgusted. "You know, Kendra was just trying to do something nice for you," she said, snapping her gum. "You did not have to humiliate her like that. It is seriously toxic behavior." I stared at her. The word toxic coming from a woman who had paid $300 to trespass in a stranger's home felt like a hallucination. "Goodbye, Tiffany," I said. She rolled her eyes and stomped out. And then there was Kendra. She was the last to pack. She was in the master bedroom, the room she had claimed for herself for a long time. When she finally emerged, she was putting on a performance that deserved an Academy Award. Her eyes were red and puffy. Her movements were slow and tragic. She dragged her bag into the living room and dropped it, then turned to look at me with a face full of wounded martyrdom. "I hope you are happy," she said, her voice shaking just the right amount. "I am not happy. Kendra," I said, standing up, "I am protecting my property." "You ruined it," she said, a tear tracking perfectly down her cheek. "You ruined the whole weekend. I planned this for months. I got everyone together. I bought the food, and you threw everyone out like garbage. You charged them rent." I said, "I was pooling costs," she shouted, her voice cracking. "Why do you always assume the worst of me? I was trying to create a memory. I was trying to bring people together, but you are so selfish. Leah, you have always been selfish. You get this big house and you just want to hoard it like a dragon." She picked up her bag. "I am going to wait for Wyatt to pick me up," she said coldly. "He is coming from the city. I am not driving while I'm this upset." She walked out to the porch and sat on the swing, staring at the ocean, a portrait of the wronged woman. I watched her through the glass. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash. The house was emptying, but the stain of them remained. I needed to move. I needed to reclaim the space. I started in the living room. I stripped the sheets off the pull-out couch. I gathered the beer cans left on the side tables. I wiped down the counters where sticky rings of margarita mix had dried. I went to the kitchen island and picked up the welcome binder. I needed to see what else they had changed. I flipped past the Wi-Fi page I had photographed yesterday. I checked the emergency contacts. Then, I felt something thick in the back pocket of the binder. I reached in and pulled out a small manila envelope. It was sealed, on the front, in Mrs. Gable's shaky cursive. It read, "For emergencies only. Do not copy." I tore it open. Inside was a single brass key. It was the physical key to the back door deadbolt. Mrs. Gable had told me about it during the walkthrough. She kept it there in case the smart lock batteries died. But something was wrong. The key had a tag on it, a white, plastic tag with a paper insert, "Spare, cleaner access." The writing on the tag was not Mrs. Gable's cursive. It was block print, sharp, angular letters, and the plastic was white, pristine white. Mrs. Gable's binder was 10 years old. Everything in it was yellowed with age. This tag was new. I stared at it. Someone had found the emergency key. They had labeled it. And if it was labeled spare, that implied there was a primary set that had been given out. Cleaner access. I remembered Owen Dillard, the neighbor. Cleaning crew was here yesterday morning. I pocketed the key. My stomach turned. I walked into the guest room, the bunk room where I had slept. I started checking the drawers. If they had treated this like a hotel, maybe they had left other operational items. The top drawer was empty. The middle drawer held extra blankets. The bottom drawer had a small, spiral-bound notebook tucked under a lining paper. I pulled it out. It was a cheap drugstore notebook, the kind with a cardboard cover. I opened it. The first page was dated 2 weeks ago. October 14th, contractor visit, quote for deck expansion, $6,000. October 15th, photo shoot, Wyatt brought lights. October 16th, Cove Nest onboarding submitted. I flipped the page. November 1st, weekend, grand opening, full house, revenue projection, $4,000. November 7th, Smith family, 3 nights, paid deposit, November 14th, open, November 21st, Thanksgiving special, pending inquiry. I sat down on the floor. The room spun. It wasn't just a weekend. It wasn't just a housewarming gone wrong. This was a business ledger. They had bookings. They had taken deposits for dates in the future. They had a schedule. Smith family, 3 nights, that was next weekend. I looked at the handwriting. It wasn't Kendra's loopy script. It was the same block print as the key tag. I stood up, clutching the notebook. I needed the documents. I needed to see the contract. I walked back to the kitchen and opened my laptop. I found the number for Cove Nest Stays again. I dialed. It was Sunday, but Brenda had answered yesterday. "Thank you for calling Cove Nest Stays. This is Brenda." "Brenda," I said. "This is Leah Nelson." There was a pause, a hesitation that told me she had been warned about me. "Oh, Ms. Nelson, hi. I am not calling to argue," I said, keeping my voice terrifyingly level. "I am calling to make a formal demand. I need you to email me the full onboarding contract, the direct deposit authorization form, and the IP address log of the submission. Right now, Ms. Nelson, as I said, those are internal documents. If I do not have those documents in my inbox in 5 minutes," I said, cutting her off, "I will be driving to the Seabury Cove Police Station to file a report for identity theft and wire fraud. I will list Cove Nest Stays as an accessory to the crime." Silence. Then, the sound of rapid typing. "I am sending the file now," Brenda said, her voice stripped of its cheerfulness. "It is coming to the email we have on file." "No," I said, "you will send it to the email I am calling from. Write this down." I gave her my real email. "Sent," she said tightly. I hung up. I refreshed my inbox. The email appeared. Covenest_contract_Nelson, PDF. I opened it. I scrolled past the liability clauses. I scrolled past the marketing agreements. I stopped at the signature page. Leah Nelson. It was a digital scrawl. It looked vaguely like my name. But the L was looped wrong. The N was sharp, not rounded. It was a forgery. A bad one. But it was the next page that made the bile rise in my throat. Direct deposit authorization. Bank name, Coastal Regional Bank. Account holder, name, Wyatt Cross. Account number, ending in 4490, Wyatt Cross. I stared at the name. Wyatt was Kendra's boyfriend of 2 years. I knew him as a guy who wore expensive watches but drove a leased car. A guy who always had a venture he was working on. Crypto. Dropshipping. House flipping. He was charming, in a slick, surface-level way. He always remembered my birthday. But he never bought a gift. He just promised to get me in on the ground floor of his next big thing. He had never been hostile to me. He had been friendly, and all that time, he had been assessing me. He had seen my burnout. He had seen my desperate need to buy a house. He had seen my vulnerability. And he had seen an asset he could leverage. I looked at the revenue split on the contract. Management fee, Wyatt Cross, 20%. Owner, payout, 80%. But the payout account was his. He was taking 100% of the revenue. He was using my mortgage, my credit, my liability insurance, and my property to generate cash for himself. And Kendra? Kendra was the face. She was the one who got the keys. She was the one who managed the social aspect. They weren't helping me. They were harvesting me. I closed the laptop. I felt sick. Physically, violently sick. I needed an adult. I needed someone who wasn't part of this twisted web. I called Mara. She picked up on the second ring. "Tell me you kicked them out. They are gone," I said. My voice sounded hollow. "But Mara, it is worse. I told her about the notebook. I told her about the contract. I told her about Wyatt's name on the bank account." There was a long silence on the line. When Mara spoke, her voice was razor sharp. "Leah, this is not a prank. This is not a family squabble. This is a felony. I know. This is identity theft, forgery, wire fraud, and unauthorized access to a computer system. Wyatt Cross is going to prison if you pursue this." I gripped the edge of the counter. "And Kendra?" I asked. If she knew? If she facilitated it? She is an accomplice. Conspiracy to commit fraud. I closed my eyes. My sister. If I filed this report, I wasn't just ending the weekend. I was ending the family. My mother would never forgive me. My father, who tried to stay out of everything, would be crushed. Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays, it would all be over. I can't send my sister to jail. "Mara," I whispered, "you are not sending her to jail." Mara said firmly. She drove herself there. "Leah, listen to me. They have bookings for next weekend. They have a bank account collecting money in your name. If someone slips on those stairs and breaks their neck, you get sued. If they trash the house, you pay for it. If they run a drug ring out of your living room, you go down for it. You have to stop this. But maybe I can just cancel the contract? Maybe I can just change the locks and tell them to stop? And do you think Wyatt Cross, a man who forged your signature and stole your identity, is just going to say, 'Aw shucks,' and walk away? He has debts. Leah, people like that don't stop because you asked nicely. They stop when they hit a wall. You have to be the wall." I looked at the empty living room. I looked at the spot on the floor where the cooler had been. I remembered Kendra's face when she called me selfish. The conviction in her eyes. She truly believed she was entitled to this. "I will go to the police." I said. "Good," Mara said. "Go now. Don't wait." I hung up. I walked into the living room. I looked out the window. Kendra was still on the swing. She was texting. Probably Wyatt. I grabbed my purse. I grabbed the binder. I grabbed the notebook. I grabbed my laptop. I walked out the front door. Kendra looked up as I locked the deadbolt. "Where are you going?" she asked, wiping her eyes. "Wyatt isn't here yet. I have to run an errand." I said, "Can you bring me a coffee?" she asked. "Since you kicked me out of the house and I can't make one?" The audacity was breathtaking. "No," I said. I got in my car and backed out. The Seabury Cove Public Safety Bureau was a low brick building near the center of town. It looked more like a post office than a police station. I walked in. The lobby was empty except for a dispatch officer behind a glass partition. "I need to file a report," I said. "Regarding?" "Identity theft and property fraud." The dispatcher buzzed me through a side door. I sat at a metal desk across from an officer. His nameplate read, Officer Rami Voss. He was young, maybe my age, with a serious face and tired eyes. "Start from the beginning," he said, opening a laptop. I laid it all out. I showed him the deed proving I owned the house. I showed him the Cove Nest listing. I showed him the forged contract with Wyatt's bank account. I showed him the notebook with the ledger. I showed him the cleaner access key. Officer Voss didn't look bored. He didn't look dismissive. He looked disturbed. He picked up the notebook and flipped through it. "You are saying you have no relationship with this Cove Nest stays?" he asked. "None. And this Wyatt Cross? He is my sister's boyfriend." Officer Voss looked up at me. "And your sister? Is she involved?" I hesitated. The words felt like stones in my mouth. "She brought the guests." I said, "She collected the money from them personally via Venmo. She let the vendor in to set up the lock." Officer Voss nodded slowly. He typed for a long time. "Okay, Ms. Nelson, Here is the situation. This is significant. We have unauthorized use of a dwelling. We have forgery of a legal instrument. We have potential wire fraud because of the bank transfer setup. He looked at the contract again. Because this involves family. I have to ask, did you ever, at any point, verbally agree to let them manage the property? Even jokingly? No. I told them explicitly no. I have text messages. I showed him the text I sent Kendra before she arrived. No party, no guests, no exceptions. Okay, he said. That helps. He printed out a sheet of paper. This is your case number. A detective will be assigned to follow up on the financial side. As for the property, do you feel safe going back there? I don't know. I said, my sister is still there, waiting for her boyfriend. Do you want an escort? No. I said, I need to talk to her. One last time. I need her to know that I know. If you change your mind, call us. And Ms. Nelson, change that lock code immediately. I drove back to the house as the sun began to set. The sky was bruising purple and gray. When I pulled in, a black Range Rover was parked in the driveway. Wyatt, he was standing on the porch, leaning against the railing, talking to Kendra. He looked perfectly at ease. He was wearing a fleece vest and boat shoes, looking every inch the coastal vacationer. I parked and got out. Wyatt smiled when he saw me. A big, white, shark-like smile. Leah, he called out. Kendra told me there was a bit of a mix-up. Sorry about the chaos. Leah, you know how these things get out of hand. I walked up the steps. I didn't smile back. It wasn't a mix-up. Wyatt, I said. He chuckled, putting a hand on Kendra's shoulder. She was looking at the ground. Look, I know you're stressed, he said, his voice smooth as oil. We just wanted to help you break the place in. And hey, I heard you saw the listing. Don't freak out. That was just a placeholder. I was going to present it to you as a surprise proposal. Show you the potential, you know? A surprise proposal, I repeated, with a forged signature? And your bank account listed for the payouts? Wyatt's smile didn't waver, but his eyes went dead. That is just for setup, he said. Standard procedure to get the API working. We would have switched it over. Eventually, I said. I looked at Kendra. Did you know? I asked her. Did you know he put the money in his account? Kendra looked up. Her eyes were defiant. He was going to use it to pay off the setup costs, she said. And then we were going to split it. We were doing this for you. Leah, you don't know how to handle money. You have a mortgage now. You need help. I stepped closer to them. I went to the police. I said. The silence that followed was absolute. The sound of the ocean seemed to stop. Wyatt's smile vanished. He stood up straighter. You did what? He asked. His voice was no longer smooth. It was low and dangerous. I filed a report. I said, identity theft. Forgery. Wire fraud. I gave them the contract. Wyatt. I gave them the notebook I found in the guest room. Wyatt stared at me. His face flushed a dark, angry red. You are bluffing, he said. Here is the case number. I said, holding up the slip of paper. Officer Voss took the report. He was very interested in the bank account details. Wyatt looked at the paper. Then he looked at Kendra. You said she was manageable. He snarled at her. Kendra flinched. She looked terrified, not of the police, but of him. She is, Kendra stammered. She is just emotional. Leah, you have to withdraw that. You can't do this to us. I am not withdrawing anything. I said, get off my property. Both of you. If you are here in 5 minutes, I am calling Officer Voss back. Wyatt glared at me. For a second, I thought he might hit me. I saw the violence coiling in his shoulders. But he was a coward. Grifters usually are. He spat on the deck, right near my boot. You are making a big mistake. Leah, he said. He turned and marched down the stairs. Kendra didn't move. She stood there, shivering in the cold wind. Wyatt got into the Range Rover. He gunned the engine. Kendra, he yelled out the window. Get in the car. Kendra looked at him, then at me. She took a step toward me. Leah, please, she whispered. He is going to kill me. He owes people money. If he doesn't get the rental income, that is not my problem, I said. Her face hardened. The fear vanished, replaced by a cold, ancient hatred. You really are a monster, she said. I didn't answer. She stepped closer, invading my space, her breath smelling of stale wine. You think you are so better than us, she hissed. Because you have a job? Because you have a credit score? You are nothing without this family. I looked at her. You didn't help me. Kendra, I said, my voice shaking. You targeted me. You saw me drowning, and instead of throwing a rope, you tried to steal the boat. She laughed, a short, bitter bark. Families share. Leah, she said, that is the rule. If you have it, you share it, and if you don't share, she leaned in, her eyes wide and dark. Then you don't get to stay, family. She turned and ran down the stairs. She got into the Range Rover. Wyatt peeled out of the driveway, throwing gravel everywhere, leaving 2 deep ruts in the grass. I watched the taillights disappear around the bend. I was alone. I walked inside. I locked the deadbolt. I engaged the privacy latch. I went to the back door, locked. I went to the windows, locked. I walked into the kitchen. I picked up the notebook, the ledger of my exploitation, and threw it in the trash. Then I fished it out. Evidence. I went into the master bedroom. I couldn't sleep there. It smelled like Kendra's perfume. I went to the bunk room. It felt tainted too. I went to the living room and pulled the armchair, Mrs. Gable's chair, into the corner, away from the windows. I sat down. I put my phone on the table. I went to the front door and lined up my shoes. Running shoes, laces open, ready to step into. I went back to the chair. I was shaking. The adrenaline was leaving my body, replaced by a deep, bone-chilling cold. If you don't share, you don't get to stay family. She had said it like a curse. I pulled the blanket around me. I realized then that the war wasn't over. I had won the battle for the weekend. I had reclaimed the house, but I had started something much bigger. I had exposed the rot at the center of the tree, and now the tree was going to fall on me. I closed my eyes, listening to the wind rattle the shutters. I didn't sleep. I just waited for the next car to pull into the driveway. Monday morning in Seabury Cove was a different world than the weekend. The tourists were gone. The fog hung low and heavy over the harbor, and the town returned to its locals, people who worked, who struggled, and who knew that summer was just a season, not a lifestyle. I stood at the counter of Harborline Title and Settlement at 9 o'clock sharp. I placed the folded police report on the polished cherry wood surface. The number, Incident Report 4920, was printed in bold black ink. Mrs. Higgins looked at the paper, then at me. She adjusted her glasses, her expression shifting from administrative politeness to genuine concern. This is serious. Ms. Nelson, she said softly. I need the corrections expedited. Mrs. Higgins. I said, I want my name, my phone number, and my email locked down. I want a note on the file that no changes are to be made without my physical presence and government identification. She nodded, typing rapidly. We can do that. I have already flagged the account, but there is something else you should see. She turned her monitor slightly so I could see the screen. When I ran the audit log yesterday after you left, I found another pending request in the system queue. It was submitted late Friday night, just after closing. She pointed to a line of text. Request to update mailing address for property correspondence. I leaned in. The address listed was not my apartment in the city. It was a post office box in a strip mall in a town called Revere, 40 minutes away. They were trying to divert the mail. I whispered. Mrs. Higgins nodded grimly. Tax bills, insurance notices, legal warnings. If they control the mail, they control the narrative. You would never know if the county was putting a lien on your house until the sheriff showed up to evict you. I felt a cold sweat prickle down my spine. This was not just about using the house for weekends. This was a slow-motion hijack. They were wrapping me in a cocoon of ignorance so they could feed on the asset without me noticing. Cancel it, I said. It is already rejected. she assured me. But Ms. Nelson, whoever is doing this has your social security number. They have your closing statement. You need a lawyer, not a real estate lawyer, a litigator. I left the office with a new folder of documents and a recommendation for a firm called Pell and Morrow Legal. The office of Pell and Morrow was located in a converted Victorian house on the edge of town. It smelled of old paper and lemon polish. Sonia Pell was a woman in her 50s with sharp, intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense haircut. She listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she sat back and tapped her pen against the desk. "You have a squatter." "Leah," she said. "No." I said, "They are gone. I kicked them out." "Physically, yes," Sonia said. "But legally, psychologically, they are still in the house. They have established a pattern of tenancy. They have financial entanglements. And most importantly, they feel entitled. That is the most dangerous kind of intruder." She leaned forward. "You need to stop thinking of this as a family dispute. If a stranger did this, forged your name, routed your money to their account, listed your home, what would you do?" "I would sue them." I said, "I would have them arrested." "Exactly." Sonia said, "The fact that she shares your DNA is irrelevant to the law. In fact, it makes it worse, because she has access to your personal data." She tore the sheet off the legal pad. "Here is your strategy. First, total lockdown, hard security, the smart lock is compromised. Get a deadbolt, get cameras. Second, we issue a formal no trespass notice, not a text message, a certified letter. It creates a legal boundary. If she crosses it, she goes to jail. Third, you secure your credit, lock it down. If this Wyatt character has your info, he will try to open credit cards in your name to fund his legal defense." She looked at me, her eyes softening just a fraction. "I know this is hard. Leah, I see people in this chair every week fighting over property. It is never about the house. It is about power. Your sister has been taking power from you for a long time, hasn't she?" I looked down at my hands. "Yes." "Well," Sonia said, standing up, "today is the day you take it back." I spent the afternoon turning my home into a fortress. I hired a locksmith named Gary, a man with forearms the size of tree trunks and a van full of tools. He removed the sleek, high-tech smart lock that Wyatt had installed. "Garbage," Gary grunted, tossing the device into a bucket. "These things are Swiss cheese. Anyone with a Flipper Zero can clone the signal if they get close enough." He installed a heavy commercial-grade deadbolt. It had no keypad, no Bluetooth, just a jagged metal key that felt substantial in my hand. "I want the only copy," I said. "You got it," Gary said. After the deadbolt, I had him install a new smart lock on the back door, but this one was different. It was a closed system, connected to a hub I controlled, with two-factor authentication linked to an authenticator app on my phone, not just an email. Then came the cameras. I bought a simple system from the hardware store. 3 wireless cameras. I mounted one facing the driveway, one facing the back deck, and one inside the living room, pointing at the front door. When I synced them to my phone, I saw myself on the screen. I looked tired. I looked pale, but I looked like the owner. The final step was the letter. I sat at my kitchen table and drafted it, following Sonia's template, to Kendra Nelson. Effective immediately. You are hereby notified that you are not permitted to enter the property located at 24 Driftwood Lane, Seabury Cove. You have no lease, no ownership interest, and no permission to be on the premises. Any entry by you or your agents will be considered criminal trespass and will be reported to the Seabury Cove Public Safety Bureau. Furthermore, you are to cease and desist all unauthorized listings of the property on any rental platforms. Any further financial transactions regarding this property using my name will be forwarded to the Fraud Investigation Unit. Leah Nelson. I read it over. It was cold. It was sterile. It was the language of enemies. I thought about the time Kendra taught me how to put on eyeliner. I thought about the time she beat up a bully who pushed me on the playground. I almost deleted it. Then I looked at the trash can where I had thrown the notebook. The ledger. Revenue projection. 4,000. I hit send. Then I printed a copy to mail via certified post. The reaction was immediate. It didn't come in a direct text. Kendra knew better than to create a record now. It came in the form of a digital smear campaign. I was sitting on the couch, watching the camera feed of the empty driveway, when my phone started buzzing. It was a notification from Instagram. My cousin, Bethany, had commented on a post. I opened the app. Kendra had posted a photo of herself looking out at the ocean, a photo taken from my deck yesterday. The caption was a masterpiece of vague booking. Heartbroken to realize that money really does change people. You think you know someone. You think you are building a life together, and then they shut the door in your face because they want to keep it all for themselves. Sad day for family values. Betrayal, greed moving on. The comments were flooding in. Oh no. Hun, what happened? Some people just forget where they came from. Keep your head up. Kendra, karma is real. Then came the direct messages to me. My Aunt Linda. Leah, I saw Kendra's post. I hope you two aren't fighting over the house. You know your grandmother would be so upset to see you girls bickering. My cousin Bethany. Leah, are you seriously kicking her out? She told me she helped you buy the place. She had told people she helped me buy it. She was rewriting history in real time. I wanted to scream. I wanted to post the police report. I wanted to post the forged contract. But Sonia had warned me, do not engage in the court of public opinion. You will lose. Stick to the court of law. I put the phone down. I let them buzz. I let them think I was the villain. Then, the big one came. My mother calling. The screen lit up with Mom, a photo of her smiling at a garden party. I stared at it. If I didn't answer, she would call the police and say I was missing. That was her move. I picked up. Hello, Mom. Leah. Her voice was tight, anxious. What is going on? Kendra just called me in tears. She says you threatened to have her arrested? She committed fraud. Mom, I said, I didn't threaten anything. I stated a fact. Fraud? Leah, do not use words like that. It is a family misunderstanding. She said she was trying to help you set up a rental income to pay the mortgage. She said you got confused and blew up at her. I got confused? I laughed. A harsh sound in the empty house. Mom, she forged my signature. She put Wyatt's bank account on the direct deposit. Well, that is just technical details, Diane said, waving it away verbally. Wyatt is good with business. He was probably just holding the funds until you got your account set up. You know how overwhelmed you get with paperwork. I froze. Overwhelmed with paperwork. That was the narrative. Leah is smart but fragile. Leah needs help. Leah breaks under pressure. Mom, I said slowly, I am a 33-year-old senior claims adjuster. I handle million-dollar settlements for a living. I am not overwhelmed by paperwork. Honey, you know what I mean. You have been so burnt out lately. We are all just worried about you. Kendra thought, we all thought, that if the house could pay for itself, you could take a break, maybe quit that stressful job. We all thought. My grip on the phone tightened. Who is we? Mom? Diane hesitated. Well, me and your father, and Kendra and Wyatt. We were talking about it at dinner a few weeks ago. You talked about my house? Before I even closed on it? We were just brainstorming, Diane said, her voice rising defensively. Look, Leah, you have this massive asset. It is selfish to let it sit empty for weeks at a time when it could be generating wealth for the family. Wealth for the family. And there it was. The core truth. In the Nelson family. There was no individual property. There was only the collective pot. Controlled by the loudest voices. And funded by the quietest ones. Mom, I said, did you know about the Cove Nest listing? There was a silence. A long, heavy silence. I knew they were looking into options, she said finally. Did you know they listed it? Leah, don't interrogate me. I just want you to fix this. Kendra is devastated. She feels like you used her. I used her? She did all that work getting the house ready, setting up the listing, buying the supplies, and you just threw her out. Listen to me. You need to compromise. Give her a few weekends. Let her manage the summer rentals. She needs a win right now. Leah, Wyatt is going through a hard time. I hung up. I didn't say goodbye. I just pressed the red button. My hand was shaking so hard I dropped the phone on the couch. She knew. My mother knew they were listing my house. She knew they were planning to rent it out. She probably knew about the bank account. Or at least, she chose not to ask where the money was going. She had watched me save for 10 years. She had watched me sacrifice. And she had sat at dinner with Kendra and Wyatt and plotted how to carve up my success before I even signed the deed. I couldn't stay in the house. The walls felt like they were closing in. I needed to see her face. I needed to see the evidence. I grabbed my keys. I grabbed the folder of documents. I drove to Willow Ridge. It was an hour-and-a-half drive inland, away from the clean, salt air of the coast, and into the suffocating beige suburbia where I had grown up. I pulled into the driveway of the colonial house on Maple Street. It looked exactly the same as it had for 20 years. The neatly trimmed hedges, the flag by the door, the facade of a perfect, happy family. I walked in without knocking. "Leah?" My dad called from the living room. He was watching golf. He always watched golf when things got tense. It was his way of checking out. I walked past him. "Hi, Dad?" I went straight to the kitchen. My mother was sitting at the built-in desk where she paid the bills. She jumped when she saw me. "Leah, you didn't say you were coming." I walked up to the desk. It was cluttered with mail, catalogs, and a folder. A bright yellow folder labeled Beach House Options. I reached out and grabbed it. "Leah, give that back," Diane snapped, reaching for it. "That is private. It says Beach House." "Mom, it is about my house. It is not private." I opened it. The first page was a printout of a screenshot. It was the Cove Nest listing for my house, but it was dated 3 weeks ago, before the closing. The second page was a spreadsheet. Projected revenue. June, 12,000. July, 15,000. August, 15,000. And then, the third page. Family usage calendar. I stared at it. It was a calendar for the next year. The summer months, June, July, August, were blocked out in green, rental only. September was marked Kendra Wyatt. October was marked Mom Dad. November was marked Leah. I looked up at my mother. "I get November?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I buy the house. I pay the mortgage. I pay the insurance. And I get November?" Diane stood up. She looked flushed, embarrassed, but also defiant. "It is just a draft. Leah, we were going to show it to you. It makes financial sense. The summer rates are so high. It would be foolish to use it personally then." "Foolish for whom?" I asked. "For me? Or for Wyatt?" She crossed her arms. "Why do you hate him so much?" she asked. "He is trying to build a future for your sister. He is stealing from me." "Mom!" I shouted. I slammed the folder down on the desk. "Why does he need the money so bad?" "Mom? Why is he desperate enough to commit a felony?" Diane looked away. She picked at a loose thread on her sweater. He had some bad luck with a business partner," she mumbled. "There was a lawsuit." "What kind of lawsuit?" "A civil judgment," she whispered. "He owes a significant amount if he doesn't pay it. They are going to garnish his wages, or worse." I felt the blood drain from my face. "So my house was the bailout. That is what this is. You were going to use my equity, my rental income, to pay off his debt." "We were going to pay you back," Diane cried. "Once he got back on his feet, we are family. Leah, we help each other." "No," I said, "you help Kendra. You have always helped Kendra, and you use me to do it." I looked around the kitchen where I had done my homework, the kitchen where I had learned to be quiet, to be good, to not cause trouble so Mom could focus on Kendra's drama. "I am done, Mom," I said. I turned to leave. "Leah, wait." Diane grabbed my arm. Her grip was strong. "You can't just walk away. You can't send your sister's boyfriend to jail. It will destroy this family. The family is already destroyed." I said, "You destroyed it when you decided my life was just fuel for theirs." I pulled my arm free. I walked to the front door. My dad was still watching golf. He didn't turn around. He knew. He had signed off on it too. In his own passive way. I got in my car. I threw the yellow folder onto the passenger seat. I had stolen it. Let them sue me. I drove back to Seabury Cove in the dark. The rage was gone, replaced by a cold, hard determination. They wanted a meeting? They wanted to talk about the plan? Fine, I would give them a meeting. I pulled into my driveway at 9 o'clock. The house was dark. The deadbolt was secure. I went inside. I turned on the lights. I called Sonia Pell. I need to schedule a meeting. I said, at the house, tomorrow night. I want you there. And I'm going to invite them. Sonia hesitated. Are you sure that is wise? Yes. I need them to say it in front of a witness. I need them to admit the debt, the plan, everything. I want it recorded. And then I want to present them with the terms of their surrender. Okay, Sonia said. I will be there. 6 o'clock? 6 o'clock. I hung up. I sat at the kitchen island. I opened the yellow folder. I laid out the calendar. I laid out the revenue projections. I was building my case. I was preparing for the final confrontation. My phone pinged. A notification. I looked at the screen. It wasn't a text. It wasn't an email. It was a notification from an app I didn't recognize. Smart Host Manager. I stared at it. I had never downloaded this app. But then I remembered, when I was setting up the new lock, the hub had auto-synced with my Google account. It must have pulled in data from connected services. The notification read, New booking approved. Guest, Mark S. Check-in, Friday, November 7th. Code generated, 8842. I froze. I had changed the locks. I had deleted the CoveNest account. I had secured the email. How was there a booking? And how was a code generated? I clicked on the notification. It opened a dashboard I had never seen before. Property, 24 Driftwood Lane. Status, active. Integration, direct AP. iLink, channel manager, Wyatt_admin. My breath caught in my throat. They hadn't just used CoveNest. They had set up a channel manager, a software that pushes listings to Airbnb, VRBO, and Booking.com simultaneously. And the channel manager wasn't linked to the lock app I knew about. It was linked to the hub itself. I looked at the wall where the internet router was. The router the technician had installed. It wasn't just a router. It was a bridge. They had a hardware backdoor. Wyatt could still generate codes. He could still accept bookings. He could still unlock my door from his phone, bypassing my app entirely because he controlled the infrastructure of the house's network. Code generated, 8842. I looked at the deadbolt I had installed today, the heavy, dumb, metal lock. Thank God for Gary. But then I looked at the notification again. Guest message. Thanks for the quick approval. We will be arriving late Friday night. Can you confirm the back door key is still under the mat? The back door key. The physical key I had found in the binder. The one I had put in my pocket. But the message implied there was another one, or that they expected one to be there. I stood up. I ran to the back door. I threw open the door and dropped to my knees on the deck. I lifted the welcome mat. Nothing. I checked the flower pot. Nothing. But then I saw it. A small, fresh scratch on the underside of the deck railing. I felt under the railing, a magnetic key box. I pulled it loose. I slid the cover open. It was empty. My heart stopped. It was empty because someone had already taken it. I stood up and spun around. Looking into the dark yard, the booking was for Friday, but the key was gone now. Someone had been here today. While I was in Willow Ridge, someone was watching the house, and they had a key. The missing key was not a magic trick. It was not a hacker bypassing my firewall. It was a woman named Janelle Pike. I found her on Friday morning at 10 o'clock. I had been sitting in my car down the street, watching the house, waiting to see who would come for the magnetic key box. A beat-up blue sedan pulled into the driveway. A woman in pink scrubs got out, carrying a plastic caddy of cleaning supplies. I knew her, or rather, I knew of her. She was the reputable cleaner mentioned in the welcome binder Mrs. Gable had left. I drove up behind her, blocking her in. She jumped when I slammed my car door. She looked tired, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. Her eyes wide with the specific anxiety of someone who knows they are in the wrong place. "Janelle?" I asked. She clutched the caddy to her chest. "Oh, Ms. Nelson. Hi. I didn't think you were. I thought the guests were checking in later. There are no guests." "Janelle," I said, walking up the driveway, "and there is no key under the deck anymore." Her face crumpled. She looked at the ground. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I really need this job. Ms. Nelson." We sat on the porch steps. She didn't want to go inside. She told me everything. Wyatt had called her 3 weeks ago. He told her he was the new property manager. He told her I was the silent partner who handled the bills but that he handled operations. He had demanded her spare key, the one Mrs. Gable had given her years ago for emergencies, and told her to keep cleaning, keep prepping, and keep her mouth shut if she wanted to keep the contract. "He told me you were difficult," Janelle said, picking at her fingernail. "He said you were going through a mental health crisis and that we had to just work around you until you stabilized. He said if I told you about the bookings, it would trigger an episode." I felt a cold shiver that had nothing to do with the sea breeze. They were already planting the seeds. Leah is unstable. Leah is fragile. Leah cannot be trusted with reality. I asked Janelle for the key. She gave it to me. It was a copy, shiny and gold. "Go home." "Janelle," I said, "if Wyatt calls you, tell him you quit." I watched her drive away. I had the physical key. I had the digital lock secured. But I knew it wouldn't be enough. I called Officer Rami Voss. "I am at the station." He said, "I have your report on my desk. I ran the bank account number. It is flagged for suspicious activity. Multiple small deposits, immediate withdrawals to online casinos and debt collectors. Wyatt wasn't investing. He was hemorrhaging money. They are coming tonight." I said, "I invited them for a meeting, but I also found out they have a booking scheduled for tonight. Strangers are going to show up expecting a place to sleep. That is a volatile mix." Voss said, "Listen, Ms. Nelson, I can have a unit patrol the area. I will be in the neighborhood myself. But until they actually break a law in front of me, until they smash a window or refuse a direct order to leave, I cannot intervene in a civil meeting." "I understand." I said, "I just need you close. I will be 2 streets over." He promised, "Keep your phone on you." 6 o'clock came with the heavy, gray light of a storm front moving in. The ocean was churning, dark and angry. I sat in the living room. I had set up the stage. The yellow folder from my mother's house was on the coffee table. The forged contract was next to it. The camera in the corner was recording, its small red light taped over with black electrical tape so it wouldn't be obvious. But it was running. I heard tires on gravel. I checked the monitor. A black Range Rover, Kendra and Wyatt, and then another car, a silver sedan. 2 people got out. I recognized them from the weekend invasion. Mike and Sarah. The friends. They were bringing an audience. Witnesses. Or maybe bodyguards. I went to the door. I didn't unlock the deadbolt until they knocked. Bang, bang, bang. It was a confident knock. The knock of someone who owns the place. I opened the door. Kendra stood there. She was wearing a beige trench coat and oversized sunglasses, looking like a celebrity hiding from the paparazzi. Wyatt was behind her, his jaw set, his eyes hard. Mike and Sarah hung back, looking awkward but dutiful. "Hi, Leah," Kendra said. She didn't wait for an invitation. She breezed past me into the foyer. Wyatt followed. He didn't look at me. He looked at the smart lock on the door, the one he had installed, and saw the new deadbolt. His eyes narrowed. "We are here to talk," Wyatt said, his voice tight. "Come in," I said calmly. I led them into the living room. I didn't offer them water. I didn't offer them seats. They sat anyway. Kendra took the armchair, my chair. Wyatt stood behind her, a hand on her shoulder. Mike and Sarah hovered near the kitchen, clearly instructed to be the moral support. So, Wyatt started, clearing his throat. "Kendra says you are confused about the arrangement. We wanted to sit down, face to face, and clear the air. We want to show you the numbers." He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "This is a projection," he said, smoothing it out on the coffee table. "Based on the bookings we have lined up, which, by the way, you are jeopardizing by locking us out. This property can generate $15,000 a month in peak season. I looked at the paper. It was a fantasy. And where does that money go? Wyatt? I asked. It goes into the operating account, he said quickly. To pay the mortgage, to pay the insurance, to pay the management fees, and the refinancing? I asked. Wyatt froze. His hand stilled on the paper. Who told you about that? He asked, his voice dropping an octave. I know about the debts. Wyatt, I said, I know about the civil judgment. I know you need to show consistent rental income on an asset you control to verify a new loan application. You are not trying to pay my mortgage. You are trying to leverage my equity to bail out your bad gambling habits. Kendra stood up. That is a lie, she shouted. Wyatt is a businessman. He is trying to save you. Leah, you are drowning in this house and you don't even know it. I am not drowning. I said, I have a 30-year fixed mortgage at a rate I can afford. The only thing threatening this house is you. If you weren't so controlling, I wouldn't have had to do it this way. Kendra yelled. The words hung in the air. I wouldn't have had to do it this way. She admitted it. She admitted the deception was a choice, a reaction to my boundaries. You rewrote reality. Kendra, I said softly, you decided I was incompetent so you could justify stealing from me. I am not stealing. I am sharing. Families share. Another car door slammed outside. We all looked at the window. It was my mother's sedan. Diane walked up the path. She looked determined. She was clutching a thick envelope. I unlocked the door for her. Mom, Kendra said, rushing to her. Leah is being impossible. She is accusing Wyatt of gambling. She is being so paranoid. Diane patted Kendra's arm. Hush, honey. Let's just settle this. She walked into the living room and placed the envelope on the table, right on top of Wyatt's projection. Leah, Diane said, looking at me with sad, disappointed eyes. I spoke to your father. We agree that this conflict has gone too far. We drafted an agreement, a compromise. She pulled out a document. It was stapled, professional looking. Nelson Family Property Usage and Management Agreement. I picked it up. Clause 1. Leah Nelson retains title to the property. Clause 2. Kendra Nelson and Wyatt Cross are appointed irrevocable property managers for a term of 5 years. Clause 3. All rental income will be deposited into a joint account managed by Wyatt Cross. Clause 4. Leah Nelson agrees to undergo a competency evaluation regarding financial management. I stopped reading. My throat felt like it was closing up. A competency evaluation. You want to declare me incompetent? I whispered. It is not that, Diane said soothingly. It is just... Leah, you have been so erratic, buying a house without telling us, kicking your sister out in the middle of the night, calling the police on family. It is not normal behavior. We just want to make sure you are capable. Capable of what? I asked. Capable of letting you rob me? I dropped the agreement. I reached for my own stack of papers. I picked up the Cove Nest contract. This is a forgery, I said, holding it up. This is my name, signed by someone else, authorizing funds to go to Wyatt's personal account. I threw it on the table. I picked up the bank records Officer Voss had run, or at least, the notes I had made about them. This is the account history, online casinos, DraftKings, FanDuel. That is where the operating capital goes. I threw it on the table. I picked up the yellow folder I had stolen from my mother's desk. And this, I said, looking at Diane, this is the plan you all cooked up 3 weeks ago. Before I even had the keys, you carved up my year. You decided when I could visit my own home. The room was silent. Mike and Sarah were looking at their shoes. Wyatt was staring at the table, his jaw working. Kendra looked pale. Diane looked shocked, not because of the facts, but because I had found them. You went into my house? She accused. You went through my desk? You went through my life. I screamed. The sound tore out of my throat, raw and painful. You plotted against me. Kendra stepped forward. Her eyes were wild. She is having an episode, she shouted, pointing at me. Look at her. She is hysterical. Mom, see? I told you. She isn't stable enough to manage property decisions. She was doing it. She was playing the card. If they could paint me as mentally unstable, they could get a power of attorney. They could take the house for my own good. I froze. It landed. The realization hit me like a physical weight. They weren't just greedy, they were dangerous. They were willing to dismantle my personhood to get what they wanted. I looked at my mother. She wasn't defending me. She was looking at me with that same pitying, calculating expression. She was weighing the options. Leah is difficult. Kendra needs help. Maybe it is better this way. I felt a sudden, icy calm. I am not the one who forged a federal document. I said, I picked up my phone. I am calling my attorney. I said, she is on standby. And I am calling Officer Voss to come inside and take statements regarding the forgery. Wyatt moved. He stepped toward me. Put the phone down. Leah, he said. I stepped back. Toward the door. I dialed Sonia. As I put the phone to my ear, headlights swept across the living room window. Bright, high beams. A large SUV pulled into the driveway, blocking Wyatt's Range Rover. We all froze. Who is that? Diane asked. I looked out the window. 4 people were getting out of the SUV. They looked confused. They were checking their phones. One of them, a man in a zip-up hoodie, walked toward the porch. He was dragging a rolling suitcase. I opened the front door. Can I help you? I called out, my voice shaking. The man looked up. Yeah, hi. We are checking in. We booked through Cove Nest? The code isn't working. The guests. The Friday booking. Behind me. In the living room. I heard Wyatt curse. Tell them to leave, Kendra hissed. I stood in the doorway. You paid? I asked the man. Yeah, we paid in full. $800. Look, we just drove 3 hours. Is the key under the mat? The app said the key was under the mat. I looked back into the house. Wyatt was looking for an exit, but the only exit was past me, or out the back door where he knew I had locked the gate. I looked at Kendra. She looked terrified, not of me, but of the exposure. The fraud was no longer theoretical. It was standing on my porch with luggage. I looked at the street. A police cruiser turned the corner. Silent, no lights, but moving slow. Officer Voss, I had a choice. I could send the guests away. I could cover for my family one last time. I could protect my mother from the shame of seeing her daughter arrested. I could protect Kendra from the consequences of her greed. I looked at the family agreement on the table. Clause 4. Competency evaluation. They wanted to take my mind. I turned back to the man on the porch. I am the owner, I said, my voice loud and clear. Carrying into the living room. I did not rent this house to you. You have been scammed by the man standing in my living room. The man's face dropped. What? That man? I pointed at Wyatt, who was now looking frantically at the back window. He took your money. He does not have the right to rent this property. The police are pulling up now. I suggest you talk to them. I stepped out onto the porch. I raised my phone. I was still recording. Wyatt rushed the door. Leah, don't, he shouted. He stopped in the doorway when he saw the cruiser stop at the end of the driveway. Officer Voss got out. He adjusted his belt. He walked up the driveway, past the confused guests, past the Range Rover. I stood on the grass. The wind was whipping my hair across my face. Kendra stood in the doorway, behind Wyatt. She looked at the police officer. She looked at me. Her face was unreadable. It wasn't fear anymore. It was a blank, hollow realization that the script had run out. She had no lines left. I held my phone to my ear. Sonia Pell picked up. I am here. Leah, she said. I heard everything. I looked at my sister. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel joy. I felt the terrible, heavy silence of a bridge that had finally, irrevocably, collapsed. Officer Voss walked up to the porch. Is there a problem here, Ms. Nelson? He asked. I looked at Wyatt. I looked at the guests. I looked at my mother, who was watching from the window, her hand over her mouth. Yes, I said. There are trespassers on my property, and I would like to file charges for theft. The guests looked at Wyatt. He took our money? the man in the hoodie asked, his voice rising. Wyatt backed up. Kendra didn't move. The wind howled, the ocean crashed, and for the first time in a week, the house behind me didn't feel like a trap. It felt like mine. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It was a difficult journey to relive, but I hope it reminds you that your peace is worth fighting for. No matter who tries to take it from you, I would love to know where you are listening from. Please drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories about standing up to betrayal and reclaiming your life, please subscribe to Revenge Stories and share your thoughts in English. I read every single one. Stay strong and protect your peace.